Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Kendra Bloom. She is a master coach, creator of the optimal potential method and optimal leadership paradigm. And she's also a licensed psychotherapist. Welcome to the show, Kendra.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show, Kendra. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about unlocking optimal potential through nervous system mastery. But before we come to that, let's understand a bit about your journey, Kendra, to master coach. So help us understand a bit about your background so that people know who they are listening to.
Great, thank you. So I came to this as sort of in a winding road in a way. I used to be in politics and medicine, and the universe yanked me into something else, as destiny often does. I started working as a psychologist with some of the most traumatized people in the country. And that led me to just get really interested in how the nervous system works. And I had a specialty in neurobiology. So I was sort of studying like what are the most effective ways to help people heal. And over the years, I went from working with the sickest people to working with the most successful people as an executive coach. And so getting to apply some of these frameworks from the sickest to the most successful really helped me learn about human potential. And what's possible. And the common denominator for everything for me was the nervous system. No matter who you are, or what you've experienced, that was the key agent for change. And so that's sort of how I organize my work now.
Absolutely wonderful. So now let's get to the nervous system. People do understand about nervous system in one way or the other. They have heard about it. Many a times they may confuse it with nervousness. So I sometimes, it can be with different people. Earlier on, also I also used to think till I, started understanding this a bit more about. But from a common person's perspective, beyond this, what are the things that we actually do not know about our nervous system? Help us understand from that perspective so that we know about ourselves much better, about things that we have but we don't know about.
It's such a great question. I think the biggest thing to know is that the physiological state of your body, so just how the brain senses that the body is doing based on basic bodily functions like your heart rate, your respiration, your digestion, those kinds of things, tension in your body, it determines about 98% of our daily life behavior, how we see the world. Like if your nervous system is in a well-balanced, happy state and you walk in to a room, you might see potential friends. If your nervous system is in a challenged state or a dysregulated state, you might walk in and see potential threats. And it could be the same people, the same room. So much of how we see ourselves, what we believe is possible, and how we interpret what happens in our life or in our interactions with other people is completely determined by the physiological state of our body, whether it believes us to be safe or under threat. And the nervous system often draws on what is set in its automatic sort of default pathways unless it's interrupted. So it's kind of like a machine that just keeps going. So something really hard can happen when we're little, especially like 0 to 13, but 0 to 3 particularly. And if something hard happens then and we don't work it out, it ends up staying kind of stuck in the wheel and gumming up the whole system because the brain doesn't know the difference between a memory and a present moment experience. So it might still feel like something really bad is happening. And then we can actually create that same issue over and over again in our life because our brain and body believe it's already happening. They want to confirm that, and so they continue to create the negative thing.
Right. So, how should we treat our nervous system as? Should we treat it with care, or should it be or is it that it takes care of us and we don't need to take care of us, or we do need to take care of this
Yeah.
nervous system? It cares for us.
Yes, it's really a feedback loop. It's a partnership. So I like to think of the nervous system as an ecosystem or a bank account where there are certain deposits that we can make, and that requires us to understand the language of the nervous system, right? So if you could think about the nervous system like a puppy or a baby or a toddler, where you can't reason with it. I don't know if you've ever tried to reason with a toddler, but it's a challenging experience. And the nervous system's kind of the same. It's like you sort of have to learn its language to be able to communicate it with it. And what that means is that it's sensory based. So using the breath, using eyesight or things that we can see, using things we can feel, like the sensations in our body, or moving our body and giving the brain new information. All of those things you can communicate positively with the nervous system, and then the nervous system pays dividends. It will just do so much for you in return by connecting you to intuition, connecting you to clarity, creativity, connection. All of those things are based in the nervous system. So if we want access to them, we sort of got to take care of the nervous system, and then it takes care of us.
Right. And so, how do we now make best use of this? You talk about, optimal potential method. And, so how do we make, isn't it working optimally, or can we make it work harder for us, or optimally for us? How does
Yeah.
that work?
Yes. So one of the things that I work a lot with my executives on that I think is really important for everyone to know is that 80% of the nerves in our body are afferent. That means they run from the bottom of the body up to the brain rather than from the brain down. And so if you imagine, most of us are kind of trying to run our ship or run our household with only 20% of our staff, right? And it's actually the weakest staff, the staff that has the least pull and the least strength. So if you really want to maximize your potential, you need to get that 80% on board, which means starting to learn how to be in relationship with the body, the wisdom of the body, and the ecosystem of the whole human, right? So the optimal potential method brings people through the 3 phases of neurobiological change, which means how we sort of rewire the neural pathways so that rather than believing we are in a physiological threat state or a dysregulated, imbalanced state, we can move towards a balanced and regulated state. And it really starts with awareness, just starting to notice, what are the patterns that are causing suffering in my life? Like, what's happening for me? Where am I limiting myself? How am I limiting myself? What do I believe? What are the stories from my past, right, that are causing me to stay stuck in some of those old stress states? And then we work with bringing harmony, right, between that. And so if I can start to harmonize with it, I can start to change it. So just allowing the body to have room to be in relationship with it. And then we process or integrate all of the emotions and the memories that keep those old patterns stuck. And in the third phase, we get to co-create something new from a new physiological state where we get to actually work with the universe instead of against it.
Right. So, Kendra, just to understand it, so the nervous system is in a way an assistant or messenger to the brain. It carries all the things that we want to, and it takes to the brain to process it.
So the brain is actually part of the nervous system, and it's almost like there's 3 parts of the brain, and part of the brain's job is to translate information from the body to the thinking part of the brain. And so if you think about it, the brain is kind of like a messenger of the nervous system, but they are also in a feedback loop where if the brain says, oh my God, you're not breathing, there's something really wrong, right? But really we're just like over focused on an email, feeling stressed out. The brain's going to tell the body, oh, we're not doing well. And the body will respond in kind. So you can sort of think about it like a loop. It's much harder to interrupt the brain than it is to interrupt the body. So if you can take a breath, then the brain goes, oh, we're doing okay. It's much harder to be not breathing and telling yourself that you're fine and have your system believe that.
So that's a better understanding for me today, and I'm sure for earlier we used to think that the brain controls everything, and
Yes.
now here we are learning that if brain is in trouble, then it tells the nervous system, and that is like a manual override that is working within the set of things that we know about ourselves.
Yes, and actually it's interesting too, because if the parts of us that are in charge of determining safety or not safety believe that we are not safe, we lose the whole top third of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. That's all the part that's in charge of language and thinking and perception and relationships. Like we actually lose the ability to read facial expressions. We lose the ability to learn. We lose the ability to think clearly. So actually, if we think about if there is a master, it's certainly the body over the brain when it comes to influence.
Right. So, how do we make it work then? When it is the control master, what controls this nervous system that is not functioning optimally, and we are able to, help it or act as some catalyst to optimize it? I want to understand it much more from a common person's perspective. How do I do that?
Yes. I think there's 3 basic things that anyone can do. So one of them is to understand that, like any ecosystem, the nervous system needs balance. So most people spend a lot of time task oriented, doing things that have a very clear goal. They're with their head, they're seated, they're looking at a screen. All of those things are withdrawals from the nervous system bank, not deposits. So we're withdrawing a lot, right? And so we have to think about what are the kind of deposits that I can make. So things like unstructured time to play or be creative, time to breathe, time to connect with people where we're not trying to get something done, we're just being together. Even things like putting your hands in the earth or making a fire or dancing or singing or drawing. All of those things are other kinds of deposits. Resting with your eyes closed, looking at something beautiful. And those are kind of like deposits. So I think the first thing is just to check how are my deposits and my withdrawals, right? Like how am I balancing the system? I think number 2 is really to start to be curious about yourself. How do I work? What works for me? What makes me feel stressed? What is the chatter in my mind all the time telling me? Like just starting to be aware of the unconscious parts of us that run the show, right? And bringing a willingness to explore and be kind, right? So kindness is kind of the biggest thing I think we can do in some ways, which is to allow for our experience. Because if you think about it, we're trapped in our body. We can't get out. And if we're trapped somewhere with someone who is not being kind to us, what could be more upsetting for the human body, right? And so it's like, if you think, what do you want someone whispering in your ear all day long? That's wiring your brain. So what are you telling yourself, right? Where are you putting your attention and your energy and your focus? And the third one, I think, is being willing to listen to the body, to listen to your truth, to take time to check in so that you're not just letting the automatic neural pathways that are just set in stone continue to create all the momentum, but able to find who are you and what is your intention. So those are, I think, the 3 easiest things that anyone could do starting today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, as an executive coach, what is it that these executives come to you for? How do you help them with regards to nervous system mastery?
Yeah. So something I think the business world is becoming more aware of is that the way that they've done things were really successful in one way, this kind of brute force, willpower, like very kind of masculine, make it all happen kind of way of being. And there was a certain kind of success that brought. But what the new, I think, consciousness is, and especially in younger executives and younger founders, is that burnout is a huge threat. Employee retention is a huge threat. Getting to the top and having hundreds of millions of dollars, but being unhappy, or having companies fail because there wasn't a flexibility or creativity along the way. And all of those, what I find is 98% of the problems that my executives bring are all nervous system related. It's stress management, it's conflict resolution, it's an ability to think clearly or intuitively, right? And actually, if we're connected in an intuitive way, not only is our nervous system happier, but there's research that shows we actually will have more satisfying results and more abundance. So I help people understand and work through that process of change so that they can align their physiological state for success and then have more satisfaction, more happiness, sometimes more money, sometimes more direction, more purpose. And then also just helping the companies run better, because if you have a lot of people who are in dysregulated states, it's hard to drive a boat to a good island if all the crew is like blindfolded and don't know where they're going or what, how to work the ship. So that's kind of
right. So basically, we got to become much more human, the way we were designed to be.
Yes, exactly. I mean, in a way, it's like coming back to what our essential state is, working through some of the stuff that may be getting in the way of living out that full potential and being in touch with that natural joy, that natural satisfaction that we might have had access to otherwise.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Where does happiness come in? Is it also part of the nervous system? Happiness, peace, empathy, kindness, you already talked about.
Yes.
Is this all part of the nervous system? How do we make deposits there then?
Yes.
About this.
Yeah. It's 100% related. If you think about like a prey that is running from a tiger or a lion, they're not concerned with being happy, right? They're just concerned with like getting safe or getting it done. And humans are very much the same way. So if our internal state, the levels of inflammation in our bodies in particular, or the old patterns that are left over from the hard things or the somewhat difficult things we've experienced over our life are getting in the way, then there's really it's like we have blinders on and we're not available for joy. But what's cool is if we can start to focus on present moment positive things and sensations, our brain actually wires 3 times faster towards that new way of being. So you may have heard the term neurons that fire together, wire together. Is that a familiar concept for you? But it's basically like where we put our attention is how we structure our brain. And so if we take a moment to just pause and say, oh, wow, like that is a really beautiful flower, or I'm really grateful for that interaction I just had with that person, or I'm just even going to see how it feels to breathe for 2 seconds. Like you can even feel it settles the energy immediately. And that helps the nervous system be available for more positive emotions, more positive experiences. So there's sort of this like theme of a feedback loop, right? It's like we give it something positive, it can do something positive and make us more available for more positive experiences.
Right. And is the nervous system different in men and women, or is it the same way it works for both?
Most of it's the same in terms of like how we deal with stress. I think men have a greater, in general, obviously everything's, subject to individual differences, but for the most part, men's brains are more able to compartmentalize. So they're both kind of able to more over focus, right? And so I sometimes tell my executives, like, you're coming home in tiger mode, like you're going to go and kill that deal. But like, you want to apply that to your wife and you wonder why she's not interested in hanging out with you or making out with you. It's like, she can't just feeling like a piece of meat, it's not going to go well. So, I think men really, for their nervous systems, we focus a lot on transition because they can get so locked into one way of being. And so helping with transitions. And I think with women, we historically have been dependent on others for our care and for our safety. It's really new that women are independent, right? And so I think a lot of the female nervous system is looking for feedback that like we are safe and okay on our own. And so a lot of women, I think, are working with that kind of internal information. But the basics, the sort of fundamentals are the same.
Wonderful, wonderful. There is so much to understand about nervous system mastery from you, your optimal potential method and optimal leadership paradigm. I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn that from you, be your
Yes.
client. So, what is the best way for them to connect with you and learn about these?
Yeah, so I have group programs and individual programs that you can join in on. You can find me at kendra-bloom.com, or Beyond Potential You is my new Instagram account where I'm just starting to share some of this information. So those are probably the two best ways to get connected. And I would love to hear from anyone who wants more information or is interested in this. I'm sort of a nervous system geek, so I'll talk about it with you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.